I never thought I'd be the guy telling a story like this, but here I am trying to make sense of what happened. It all started about 6 months ago, right after our wedding. We had this perfect honeymoon planned, sun, beaches, the works. I thought I knew everything about her, or at least I wanted to believe I did. But that illusion shattered faster than I could blink. She seemed happy, excited even. We spent those first days doing everything I'd ever wanted. Long walks on the sand, dinners under the stars, lazy mornings waking up in each other's arms. But something felt off. Small things, really. She was a little too quick to brush off my questions, a little too tense when I brought up the future. Nothing concrete, just little warning signs I ignored because I was so eager to believe in the fairy tale. Then came the family dinner. It was supposed to be a joyful celebration, but I remember feeling a strange knot tighten in my stomach as we all sat down. My brother was there, my younger brother, and he looked different, quiet, a little too quiet. I didn't think about it at the time. The night was full of small talk and laughter, or at least it looked like laughter from the outside. That's when I saw her watch. It was sitting on the table, a sleek silver piece I'd never seen before. My eyes caught the tiny glint of something unusual, something that didn't belong. I reached out, fingered it, feeling the tiny scratch on the band. Then I noticed it. A faint smear on the back of the watch, something that looked like dried saliva maybe, or blood. I rubbed my thumb over it, feeling my stomach turn cold. I didn't say anything right then. I just kept looking at it, my mind racing, trying to piece together what I was seeing. Then it hit me like a punch to the gut. This wasn't just a watch. It was a piece of evidence, and it was connected to her. I looked at her across the table, her face all polite and innocent. But I could see the flicker of something in her eyes. Guilt, nervousness, or maybe just the realization that she'd been caught. When she finally excused herself to the bathroom, I grabbed her watch and slipped it into my pocket. That was the moment. I knew this wasn't just a fling or some silly mistake. It was something deeper, months deep, with my own brother during our honeymoon. I felt my hands tremble as I sat there trying to hold myself together while everyone else chattered like nothing was wrong. My mind kept circling back to that tiny smear on her watch. I wanted to explode, to scream and pull her aside and demand an explanation, but I kept my voice steady. What the hell is this? I finally muttered under my breath, showing the watch to my wife when she returned. She looked at it, her face blank for a second, then her lips pressed into a thin line. "It's nothing," she said, voice too calm, too rehearsed. "Just a smear from earlier, nothing to worry about." Yeah, right, nothing to worry about, but my stomach tightened and I knew I couldn't ignore this anymore. The signs had been there, small lies, quick evasions, her avoiding my gaze, and now this, evidence in my hand. It was like a punch to my chest. After that dinner, I didn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying every moment, every word she said. I stared at her across the apartment, feeling a mixture of betrayal and rage bubbling up. I wanted to believe she was joking, that maybe it was a misunderstanding. But deep down, I knew better. That watch told me the truth. And the worst part, I didn't even have to look too hard to find more. I started digging online, reading stories about infidelity, about how people hide their secrets. I knew that if I wanted answers, I'd have to do something about it. But what? Confront her outright. Wait and gather more evidence. I wasn't sure yet, but I knew one thing: things wouldn't go back to how they were before. Not now. I needed to decide what to do next. Was I going to confront her? Or was I going to find my own way of ending this nightmare? The simple truth was, I was done trusting her. The honeymoon was over, and I'd soon find out just how far I was willing to go to make her pay for what she'd done. That night, after I got the evidence, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept spinning in circles. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face. That innocent mask she wore, but behind it I knew the truth. I was furious. Not just hurt, not just betrayed. I was angry in a way I never thought I'd feel about someone I loved. I got up from bed, my limbs heavy but my mind wired. I slipped into the living room, glancing at her sleeping form through the doorway. She looked peaceful, like nothing was wrong. But I knew better. I clenched my fists, feeling the sharp heat of betrayal burn through my chest. I had to decide what to do next, whether I'd confront her immediately or sit on this, gather more evidence, plan my move carefully. I knew I couldn't just storm in and accuse her. She'd deny it, play innocent, and I'd be left with nothing. No, I had to be smart. I'd already seen enough to know the truth. I needed to build my case, get more proof. If this was really happening, I had to be sure before I made a move. The next morning, I got up early. I started by checking her phone, her social accounts, everything I could access. Nothing obvious, yet. But I knew this wasn't going to be easy. She was smart, practiced at hiding her tracks. Still, I was determined. I was going to find what I needed to end this once and for all. Over the next few days, I kept my eyes open. I noticed her phone was always nearby, even when she was in the shower or sleeping. I snuck a glance while she was distracted, trying to catch a message or an email. Nothing concrete yet, but I felt I was getting closer. Every time I found a new tiny detail, an odd message, a missed call, I felt the fury building. One night I decided to check her email. It was a risk, but I couldn't wait anymore. I sat in the dark, the faint glow of her laptop illuminating my face. I sifted through her messages, scanning for anything unusual. Then I saw it, a string of emails with a contact saved under a code name. I opened one, heart pounding. The words there made my stomach turn. Flirtatious messages, plans to meet, promises of secrecy. Every line was a dagger. I read until my vision blurred, then closed the laptop, trembling. This wasn't just a one-night stand or a casual affair. She and my brother had been sneaking around for months, right under my nose. It was confirmed. I had the proof I needed. Now I just needed to decide what to do with it. I sat there in the dark, clutching my fists. The rage was pure and raw. I thought about confronting her again, loudly, publicly, letting her see the damage she'd done. But that wouldn't be enough. No, I needed to do something that would hit harder, something she wouldn't see coming. That's when the plan started forming in my mind. I knew I'd have to make her regret everything. Not just a slap on the wrist, but something that would shake her to her core. I wanted her to feel the weight of betrayal like I felt it, amplified. The plan had to be perfect. It had to be calculated. I was going to make sure she paid for her lies, her deceit, her betrayal. The next day, I started putting it into motion. I reached out to an old friend, someone who knew about the tech world, about digging up secrets. I explained what I needed, and he was surprisingly eager to help. I told him I wanted to find out if she was still sneaking around, still lying. I wanted to know if this was just a part of her past or if she was still actively involved with my brother. In the meantime, I kept my cool. I didn't let her see how much I knew. I acted normal, kept the facade of a happy husband, but inside I was planning my next move. It was only a matter of time before everything came crashing down. That evening, I stood in the doorway of our bedroom, watching her. She was brushing her hair, humming softly. I clenched my jaw, feeling that familiar mix of disgust and betrayal. I finally decided I wouldn't wait much longer. I had what I needed, the evidence, the proof. Now it was time for the game to change. I looked her in the eye and said, "We need to talk now." Her face froze, the color draining from her cheeks, but she nodded. I wondered if she even knew what was coming. The truth? I didn't care anymore. All I wanted was justice, whatever that meant, and I was about to get it. The moment I told her we needed to talk, I saw the flicker of panic in her eyes. Good, that's what I wanted. Her hands started to shake a little as she sat down across from me, trying to put on that fake calm face she'd perfected over the years. I could feel my jaw tightening, my fists clenched at my sides, but I kept my voice steady, more controlled than I felt. "Tell me the truth," I said, voice low but firm. "Are you still seeing him, my brother?" Her eyes darted around the room, and for a second I saw the cracks in her facade. She hesitated, biting her lip, then shook her head like she was trying to deny everything. But I was already prepared. I pulled out the evidence, the emails I'd found, the pictures I'd saved. I slid my phone across the table, showing her the screen. Her face went pale. Her hands fidgeted in her lap, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she just looked away, like the truth was too much to face. That's when I saw her eyes glaze over, the silent admission hanging heavy in the air. "You lied to me from the start," I said, voice thick with anger. "You've been sneaking around with my brother for months during our honeymoon. While I was sitting right there, loving you, you were meeting him behind my back. Tell me, how could you do that?" Her voice was barely audible. "It wasn't like that. I didn't mean for it to happen." I scoffed, feeling that familiar rage bubble up. "You didn't mean for it. How many times did you meet him? How many lies did you tell? And all this time I thought I knew you." She looked down, silent. I wanted to grab her and shake her. How could someone do this to me, to us? The betrayal felt like a steel shot through my chest, jagged and cold. I trusted her completely, more than I'd trusted anyone, and she'd thrown it all away. I needed her to understand what she'd done. "You think you can just pretend nothing happened, play innocent? Well, I have the evidence now, and I'm not going to sit here and let you gaslight me. You cheated on me with my own brother, and I want to know why." Her voice cracked. It was just loneliness. I was weak, it didn't mean anything. That was enough. It didn't mean anything. I'd heard enough excuses before, but this one made my stomach turn. "Weakness, that's your excuse. You betrayed me and you're calling it weakness. Do you even realize how much you've hurt me?" She looked like she wanted to cry, but I felt nothing but cold rage. I knew this was just the beginning. I'd come prepared. I'd done my research and I'd set everything in motion. I didn't want her crying now. I wanted her to understand she'd crossed a line she couldn't come back from. I leaned in closer. "You're going to leave, pack your stuff. I want you out of here by tonight. You've broken my trust and I don't want you in my life anymore." My voice was steady, but inside I was shaking with fury. I wanted her to feel the pain, the humiliation of knowing I'd uncovered her lies. She looked at me, tears pooling in her eyes, but she nodded. No protests, no excuses. Just silent acceptance. That's what I wanted, her to understand she'd lost everything. I knew I had to act quickly now, before she tried to spin her way out of it or plead for forgiveness. As she started gathering her things, I made sure I kept my composure. I wanted her to see that I was calm, in control, but inside I was boiling. My stomach clenched, my palms sweaty. I was about to show her what real consequences looked like. I handed her the keys, the last symbol of what she'd betrayed. "Take your stuff and don't come back. If I find out you're staying, I swear I'll make this worse for you." I watched her leave, the door closing behind her with a final, decisive clang. And just like that, she was gone. The apartment felt emptier than ever. All that remained was the cold silence and my own pounding heart. I stared at the door, feeling the weight of what I'd just done. This was it, the end of the lie, the end of us. I was done trusting her. Now I had a choice. Would I let this destroy me, or would I use what I'd learned, what I'd uncovered, to rebuild? I didn't have an answer yet. But I knew, deep down, I'd take control from here, and I'd make damn sure she regretted what she'd done. The silence after she left was deafening. I stood there in the middle of the apartment, my fists still clenched, heart pounding like a drum in my chest. The worst part wasn't even her leaving. It was realizing how much she'd lied, how much she'd betrayed me in the most intimate way possible. I could feel the adrenaline still coursing through my veins, but beneath that, a sharp, icy resolve was taking shape. I knew I couldn't just walk away from this without doing something to make her regret it. I'd already gathered so much, but I needed to escalate. I needed her to understand that what she did wasn't just a mistake. It was a betrayal that had consequences. I also knew that revenge, if it was going to be effective, had to be calculated, precise. My first move was to contact someone I trusted, someone who knew about the tech world and could help me get access to things I couldn't check myself. I explained everything, told him I wanted to find out if she was still sneaking around, still lying. He was surprisingly eager to help, and within a few hours I had a plan. I was going to turn the tables, make her see that I'd become the one in control now. While I waited for his help, I started to reflect on everything. How naive I'd been, how I'd believed in her, trusted her completely. That illusion was shattered now, and with it my patience. I thought about the early signs I'd ignored, her evasiveness, her quick excuses, the way she'd always seemed tense when I asked about her whereabouts. I'd been blind, and now I saw everything clearly. The plan was simple, yet cruel in its own way. I wasn't going to confront her again, at least not yet. Instead, I was going to set up a trap. I was going to find out if she was still involved, if she was still lying. If she was, I wanted her to get caught red-handed. The idea was to catch her in the act, not just confront her with evidence, but give her enough rope to hang herself. That way, she'd have no room for denial, no way to wiggle free. I spent the next few days watching her from a distance. I knew her habits, her routine. I kept my phone close, always ready for that one piece of evidence that would seal her fate. I also started to think about what I'd do once I had her caught. I wanted to be in control, to make her feel the same betrayal she'd given me, only in a way that left her with no doubt about the damage she'd caused. One night I finally got a hit. A message from my contact confirming that she'd been actively communicating with my brother. She was still involved, still lying. I sat in the dark, feeling that familiar heat of anger rise up again. It was time. Time to move from planning to action. That evening I called her into the living room. I was calm, collected, like a predator sizing up its prey. "We need to talk," I said, my voice even but cold as ice. "I want to know everything. Are you still seeing him, still hiding things from me?" She hesitated, her eyes darting around. I don't know what you're talking about." "You're lying," I said bluntly. "I have proof. You've been talking to him behind my back, doing it during our honeymoon." "How long has this been going on?" Her face drained of color. "Please." "I didn't mean for it to get this far. I was lonely, I was stupid, I didn't think you'd find out." "Oh, I found out," I said, voice dangerous now. "And I want you to understand something. This isn't just about infidelity, it's about respect, honesty. You crossed a line and I'm not sure I can forgive it. But for now, I want you to leave. Pack your things. I want you gone tonight." She looked like she was going to cry, but I was done playing nice. I handed her the keys, watching her pack in silence. Every movement she made, every word she uttered only fueled my resolve. I'd made up my mind. She was out and she was going to regret ever crossing me. Before she left, I told her, "Don't bother trying to contact me. You've burned that bridge, and don't come back. If I find out you're still lying, I'll make sure everyone knows." Her bag was by the door as she finally looked at me, eyes filled with regret and maybe a little fear. Good. When she finally stepped out and slammed the door behind her, I felt a strange mix of relief and emptiness. The apartment was quieter than ever, but my mind was alive with plans. I'd taken control, made her see that her lies had consequences. Now, I needed to focus on what came next, making sure she'd pay for what she did. As I sat alone in the silence, I realized something. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my dignity. About proving I could stand tall even after someone I loved betrayed me so completely. And I was going to do just that. The days that followed felt like a strange kind of calm before the storm. I kept everything under tight control, but inside I was simmering. I knew I'd made my move, gotten her out of my life, but the real game was just beginning. Now was the time to make sure she understood what she'd lost, not just through words, but through undeniable proof and consequences she couldn't ignore. I spent that week orchestrating the next phase. I contacted the same friend who'd helped me with the tech, and I told him I needed more than just evidence of her continued involvement. I wanted her to feel the full weight of her betrayal, something that would shake her to her core, a message she couldn't spin or deny. Within a day, he had a plan. It wasn't about blackmail or anything illegal, just enough to make her realize I was one step ahead. I wanted her to understand that I could see everything, that I was going to make her regret her choices. The plan involved minimal interference, just enough to make her uncomfortable, startle her into knowing she was being watched, and most importantly, remind her that her lies had consequences. I kept a close eye on her social media, her friends, her contacts. Nothing overt, just enough to know she was still out there, still hiding. I wasn't trying to ruin her life outright, yet, but I was planting seeds of doubt, of insecurity. I wanted her to feel hunted, like she'd made herself vulnerable enough for me to catch her at any moment. It was petty, maybe, but I knew it would hurt her more than any shouting match or public humiliation. One evening, I got the confirmation I was waiting for. She'd been sneaking around with someone else again. Not my brother this time, but certainly someone she thought she could trust. The message was clear. She was still lying, still keeping secrets. That was the final push I needed. I decided it was time for the ultimate confrontation. I didn't want to do this in anger. I wanted her to see the full scope of what she'd lost, her control, her lies, her ability to manipulate. So I prepared a plan. I'd meet her, but not where she expected. I set up a meeting in a public place, an empty with good visibility, where I could act without risking anything illegal. I knew she'd come, desperate for answers, believing she could still spin her way out. When she arrived, her face was a mixture of defiance and guilt. She thought she'd fooled me, that I was just bluffing. I sat across from her, calm but deadly serious. "Look," I said, "I know everything. About the other guy. About the lies. You thought you could keep it hidden, but I've got everything I need now. You've been lying to me from the start, and I want to know why." Her eyes darted around nervously, but she didn't deny it. Instead, she tried to plead her case, saying how she was just so lonely, how she didn't mean for it to spiral out of control. I listened quietly, feeling that familiar sense of rage building again, but I kept my voice steady. "You think that's going to fix this, that pretending it's all a mistake will make it better? No, I want you to understand that I'm done. Done trusting, done pretending. You're out of my life for good, and I want you to know you're going to regret everything you've done." She looked like she wanted to cry, but I held firm. "You're leaving, and I want the truth right here, right now. Are you still lying? Are you still involved with anyone else?" She hesitated, then nodded. "Yes, I'm sorry. I didn't want you to find out like this." I took a deep breath, feeling the cold satisfaction of finally making her face it. "Good. Then I want you to leave, and I want you to stay gone. You've broken everything between us. I don't want to hear from you again, ever." Without waiting for her to respond, I got up, handed her a folder with the evidence I'd collected, screenshots, messages, everything. I saw her eyes flicker with regret, maybe even fear. She knew she was caught, and she knew I meant every word. As she left, I sat there in the quiet, watching her walk away. The weight of everything was heavy on my chest, but at the same time I felt a strange sense of relief. I'd finally taken control. I'd shown her that her lies couldn't hide forever, that her betrayal would have consequences. Now, all that was left was to pick up the pieces and rebuild. The betrayal had cut deep, but I was alive, still standing. And I knew I'd never let anyone do this to me again. The lesson was clear. Trust is fragile, and when it breaks, you have to fight to regain your dignity. I was ready to do just that. The aftermath hit me like a punch in the gut. For days, I just sat there, staring at the empty space where she used to sleep. The apartment was too quiet, the silence deafening. I'd played out this moment in my head so many times, but nothing quite prepared me for the reality of her gone and all the lies exposed. I handed her the keys, watched her walk out that door, feeling the last shred of trust evaporate behind her. My hands were still trembling from everything, the anger, the betrayal, the relief. I'd spent years building a life, and in a few months she'd managed to tear it all apart. But I wasn't broken, not completely. I knew I had to do more than just escape the pain. I had to confront it, face it head on, and find a way to move forward. That meant truly letting go of her, of what could been. I sat down that night, took a deep breath, and made the final move. I filed for divorce. It wasn't about revenge anymore, it was about reclaiming myself, reclaiming my life. I printed the paperwork, signed the papers, and handed in everything at the courthouse. Watching the clerk stamp the final document, I felt a strange mixture of liberation and emptiness. I was finally rid of her, but the scars still lingered. The betrayal had left a mark, etched into every corner of my mind. The most difficult part, facing everyone I knew, telling them what had happened. The whispers, the pitying looks, they all made me feel exposed in a way I never had before, but I kept my head high. I knew who I was, and I knew I deserved better than someone who'd cheat on me with my own brother. In the weeks that followed, I started rebuilding. I threw myself into work, into my hobbies, anything to keep my mind occupied. Slowly, the rage faded, replaced by a quiet resolve. I realized that revenge, as satisfying as it felt in the moment, was only a temporary fix. What mattered now was healing and moving on stronger. Looking back, I see how naive I was to trust so completely, to believe in the perfect story we were creating. But I also see that I learned something crucial. Sometimes you have to rip off the mask and look at the truth, no matter how painful. Betrayal is a gift in disguise. It forces you to grow, to stand up for yourself. I don't regret what I did, not for a second, because in the end I took control. I decided my own fate. She thought she could get away with her lies, but I made damn sure she paid a price. Not through petty revenge, but through the simple act of walking away stronger than ever. So here's my advice to anyone who's been betrayed like I was. Trust is fragile, and sometimes people will hurt you in ways you never imagined. But you're stronger than your pain. You don't have to let it define you. Cut out what's toxic, confront the truth head on, and reclaim your life. Because at the end of the day, no one else is going to do it for you. And if you're ever in my position, just remember, it's okay to feel broken. It's okay to be angry. But don't let that anger consume you. Use it as fuel to move forward. Because you deserve happiness and no betrayal can take that away unless you let it.